Right, what am I doing out in the dark? All alone in the dark, having fun. Right, I'm in this little place here. So let's just squat down a bit. Not because I need the toilet, but we're looking at a flashlight. Right, what are we looking at here? Let's get a nice close look at this by headlamp light. So this is something new from Wuben. If you remember, I looked at the G4 or G5 or whatever it was. Really liked it for the price, very cheap. This is a bit more expensive, but it's a bit larger and it has a removable cell. So unlike the other one, it doesn't have a lithium ion built in. This has a 18650, and I'll show you the mechanism. So at the top you have a tail clicker, which I'll show you working in a minute. So if you listen, so that's how that's actuated. And then you'll notice there is a hinge here. Why is there a hinge? Well, you have a locking mechanism. So it's locked at the moment in the down position. So if I press this, watch, now it happens. However, if I unlock it, this will spring open like a jack in the box. You ready? There you go. Right. So what's in here? Well, obviously the spring to connect the circuit. And then in there you have a cell which is included. It's something weird like, you know, if I'll find the actual capacity. It is a 18650. But it is, let me have a look, I will find this there, it is 3,350 milliamp hours. I've never seen that one before, but it's there, and it is a button top, but there is a spring top and bottom, so this will work with flat tops, and I will double check that. So if you click that down, and then boosh, that isn't coming out. So you can change that, and also on the bottom there you have the magnetic base, so you can stick this on something. Even though this is quite hefty, this is upwards of like 150 plus grams, I think, once the cell's in. So it's getting up there in weight, and it's quite big, but that's because it's a multifunctional light. So it's slightly overbuilt for design, and it has a big, fat, thick clip. Look at that. See that there? So really wide, really strong clip, and it has a analog jog wheel, for want of a better word. There's your main button, and remember you have the tail button. So how do you make this work? You have a side section and you have a top section. Now let's look at the top section closely, because there's multiple TIRs here. So starting at the bottom there, we'll start at the bottom. You have a frosted optic TIR in the bottom there, and then you have two smaller ones. I don't know what they are. I'm going to have to find out for the full review. These are just my first thoughts from. I've already had this a couple of days. Paint still hasn't worn off yet. And then you have like a micro lens TIR. So my first thoughts when I saw this, I thought, why have they put all those on there? Why not just one big one? But I suppose by virtue of the fact it is rectangular, there would be space left over, and the secondary modes are handled by the side. So okay, maybe they could have made that one bigger, who knows. Well, look at the beam. I think it's pretty smooth for what you get. So how do you work this? Right, it has a Type-C charging there, and it has all these different settings. So this slides backwards and forwards like that. So there's T10s on each section. You can see I've slid that backwards and forwards many times, not as a fidget toy, but obviously as I'm checking. Now 2 seconds, just trying to get rid of a moth there. Right, sorry about that. Okay, so in this mode it is locked, and then there's another little creepy crawly on there. Can you see him there? I'll try and get him out of the way. There you go. I don't want to harm him. I think that's a parasitic wasp, is it not? Or some sort of thing like that. Anyway, so moving on from the locked position, the first position is side light. So that's here. So if I can get this little animal off, get off. Right, how do I do that? So let's turn this headlamp down so we're not interfering too much. So it's on a little bit, so you can see there. So the side light, you press the button. So it comes on and off. That's the main basics of that. But when it's on, you can run this jog wheel, and I'll face it down towards the floor. So I'm using the jog wheel with my finger here. Well, thumb, sorry. So that's its lowest. It goes from 5 lumens, 1 lumen all the way up to 100. So if you ramp this up, it gets higher and higher. Quite a nice diffuse beam through that diffuser. There, that's 100 lumens. So let's come to the head height. That's not bad, is it? It's certainly not stretching out, but that's not what that beam is for. Remember, the head of this has the ones which will stretch out a bit more, although they are TIR, they're not necessarily meant for throw. So how far can it see there? Not very far, look. See that? Now in this side mode there are other modes, so it gets a little bit complicated. So let's come down again and look at these conkers or whatever the hell they are on the floor. Acorns. Right, so within that mode, when it's on, you can click and hold, and you alternate in that secondary mode to colour secondary. So within that, again, look, you can jog wheel. So I'll show you on the ground, and it will go through all the colours. If you thought, I want to make use of that blue there, that nice blue, you can double press it, and it will change that into a beacon mode. So whatever colour you just picked there, beacon mode, and then back out. So dead simple, straight on. So what does it do if you double press it from off in that mode? You get to another mode. So again, side mode again. So you have 3 of these, I think. So you've got red and blue if you want to pretend you're a mall cop, and then double press again, and it will go to red and green, and then on the next one, red and yellow, and then it cycles back again, red and blue. Right, so turn that off. Right, okay, what other settings are there? Right, turn the headlamp back on again. Right, let's try and make this quick because these videos go on forever. So that was the first mode. Second mode, again, this isn't a full review, I'm just giving you a brief analysis of what I've found so far. Main headlight tip mode, sorry, I'll try and speak. I do run a review channel, you know, right? So these are the main heads. So how do you work that? Right, so you got this button or that button, right? So if you press this button, see it comes on, and then again you can do that. Do you see that? So you are able to change the settings. So you can go from low all the way up to really high there and down again. So you've got all of that. In fact, turn the headlight out, might help. Right, so we're on the lowest there now. Strangely, this doesn't go from, in the ramp, it goes from 5 to 1500 rather than 1 to 1500. Don't ask me why. And there is a moonlight mode, but that's separate. Okay, so there's the lowest, and we will jog wheel up. So it's stretching out. Again, 1500 is pretty good, look. I think that's pretty good. And you see that momentary flash? That's a visual indication for you as the user that you've reached the maximum, and it does the same on the way down. So if we point towards the floor, and I'll do the same on the way down. There you go, lowest, right, and it flashes, so you can't get any more than that. So I don't call that a moonlight mode, but there is a specific hard lock for that in regards to that slider, which I'll show you in a moment. Right, so how else can you use this? Well, you can use the tail button. So I will put my headlamp on a little bit just so you can see. So again, when it's off, see this tail button and you'll hear the click, watch. There, see, momentary, so you have access to momentary. So if I press that, you can immediately blind someone on maximum. So we'll point it over here. So I've got it in my hand here, you see? There, boom, immediate. If you want strobe, and we'll point this way for strobe. So there's normal, just double press. Boom, straight to strobe. I should have given people a strobe one, sorry about that. And then off again. So I think that's pretty good, being able to quickly get to that. It's nice being able to hold it tactically like that. You know, you don't have to be in the army to do tactical kind of things or self-defense or whatever. You know, you're walking the dog and you go, where's the dog gone in the field? Aha, right, spotted. Right, Fido, come this way. So I like that. Right, let's turn this back on. Right, what other settings are there? So if you push it forward one more, you see the setting there? It has moonlight. So it will only function in moonlight from here or here. So if I press this, you're just getting its lowest setting, you see? On, off. Now it's not momentary though. Did you notice that? Look, I don't have to hold the button down. See? So there it is, you can see it. And then off. Same with this. On and off. So I'm pretty impressed with this. So the question you've got to ask yourself is, this looks decent. It's IP68. They are saying 1 meter underwater, sorry, 1 hour underwater, under a meter of water, and it will survive. You can change the cell. Only has a 1 meter drop rating. The price is getting up there, but it is a Wuben, so you get value for money. Type C chargeable. Will it do Type C to Type C? I think it does. I'm pretty sure I tested it one morning and it was fine, but I'll cover that in the full review. And it's got the mag base, which is good. So let's look at some other lights. So in this environment, because we're not stretching out too much, let's compare it to some other lights with a similar form factor, either 18650 or smaller with a 14500, but a comparable output and some different heads. So stick that in the back pocket. Right, what else am I looking at? Right, first one, Ace Beam T35. This is about 1600 lumens max. It has a smooth reflector and a single LED down there, and it is a tail clicker. Typical Ace Beam. It has the nice side button there and a tail clicker. So let's have a look at that. Turn the headlight out. Just make sure that is working. Should be. There you go. Right. Boom. So there you go. So very traditional, not smooth and floody like that last one. You see, if I go to the far left and right, it's certainly not flooding out, is it, because that smooth reflector, but you're going to get distance. So if we look into this field here, which I should have done, I'll do quickly with the new light in a minute, but you see into this field, see how it's pushing out? It's not pushing out forever, but it's certainly doing it and trying it. So it is more traditional. Pretty nice, and you are getting more lumens, and again, it is an 18650, exactly like the cell which is in this Wuben that we're looking at. So there you go. Turn that off. Right, get that in the back pocket. And then in the dark, scrabble around. Right, something smaller with slightly less lumens. TS10, this is from Workos. There you go. Screw that back on. TS10 has the auxiliary lights, that's why that's blue. Let's turn this out and show you that. 14500, very small, so much smaller, but you're getting about 1400, 1500 lumens. I think that's pretty good. So I'll show you this. And remember, it is a triple setup as a TIR. So turn the headlight out, boom. Right, watch. Boom. And then go to turbo. Try harder. Try harder, TrailTrek. There you go. Nice tint on that as well, look. Beautiful and floody, dead small. But obviously heat is the enemy of this one because it's so small. It can't keep up with that and can't keep dumping the heat. Let's see if it pushes out into this field. Through the brambles, Yeah, a bit. It's certainly not got the distance to the T35 there, but it's wider, look. Much wider, more pleasant to walk by, I would say. And a very, very nice tint. Tiny as well. Think of that in your pocket, but there's no secondary modes. You can't, do mole cop mode and all of that. So if you need that, something to consider, right? Turn that off, get that in the back pocket. Right, what else am I testing it with? I'm testing it with, turn this on. I haven't even reviewed this yet. This is the Convoy T6, even though it's got scuff marks on it. I haven't done the full review. T6, this is using an SFT25R. I'm doing that all off the top of my head in the dark. A newer emitter for me, tail clicker, and it is small, but there should be a bit of throw on this, so let's turn this off. Right, let's turn this on. Clicker, wow, look at that. But look, super traditional thrower, look. You can see the far left and the right there easily, and as we move, look. So very focused, that hotspot is firing out, but as a result of that, watch what happens when you fire it into this field. Look at that, boom, right at the other side of the field almost, no problem. So big difference there. You can actually see the beam, look, you can see it in the air. So very, very, very throwy for a very, very small light. Again, 14500, very small, looks like a traditional double A cell, but it isn't, it's lithium ion. So we'll pop that in the back pocket. That's actually getting quite hot, that one. Also testing it with the FWAA, I think this is. Yeah, FWAA. An older light now, but quite a nice tint on this. Triple emitter. And if we turn that off, boom, and then turn that on, let's have a look. Again, small, very similar to the TS10 there. If I can get it to turn on, 2 seconds. Very unprofessional. There you go, boom, right. Let's go to turbo. Boom. I mean, look at the size of that. Tiny in my hand, and yet look, just as good. Obviously it's not as much lumens though, it's not 1500, 1400 maximum if you're lucky, and again in the field you're not going to get very far, but it's not made for that. Look, we will go out in a minute and we'll have a look at some really far reaches and we'll see what happens. So get that in the pocket. That doesn't have any secondary modes or auxiliary lights or anything like that, but it's a very small light, so if you wanted something super compact, that's what you're going to be aiming for. If you wanted 1600 lumens, but again much bigger, traditional, orange peel reflector on that though. This is the next torch, and I believe this is, if I can find the nomica, this is the, there you go, E51C next torch. Good brand actually, very, very solid lights. Let's have a look at that. Tail clicker, it helps if I screw the head on. There you go. Try harder, TrailTrek. Right, turn out the headlamp, boom. Again, so more lumens, but more of a traditional thrower, although it's not as intense in the middle because it's a orange peel, so it spreads out a little bit more in that beam profile. I think that's very pleasant. The tint's obviously more up towards the white end of the scale. Let's see what it does in this field. We'll actually go around the corner and I'll show you them just quickly in the field. Yeah, so it's reaching that first bump and then not much further. Let's come around the corner. So again, still with the next torch here. Let's walk up here. So again, I could hike by this. Same cell, 18650, same as the other ones. I believe it's a button top in this one. Same as the T35 from Airbeam. Right, let's get out here because we can stretch out more. Right, and you'll see the difference in the throwers. You may or may not need a thrower, but that's fine. But, right, let's get to this field. Right, there you go, proper field. Right, let's go through the modes here. So that's pretty bright, isn't it? Look. Yeah, I'll hold it up so you can see how far that's going. Pretty nice, pretty intense. I'll compare the others, so turn that off. And then there's the X4. So I'll show you the X4. So we'll go to turbo on that. So remember the modes, so you just go to main mode because the top one would just give you moonlight. So main mode there. Turn that on. I'll use the momentary tail clicker. So there you go. Look at that. That's pretty impressive. It's definitely not thrown as far as the other one. It's slightly less lumens at 1500. Not a lot though. But up close, look at that. It's just bombarding the area with light. I think that's fantastic. Medium range, this is stunning. For what it's pumping out and spilling around nicely. Those multiple heads I thought would be a disaster. They're not really. Look, even on that path. I'm not seeing that and thinking, good God, I can see all the different components of that light. I can't. So I'm very impressed with that. pretty good. And then you've got all those extra modes. Boom. Right, get that in the back there. Let's quickly show you those other ones. So this is the T6. Wow, look at the throw on that. And again, look at the size of it. There, pretty small. SFT 25R, I believe I've got in this. Is the emitter. Look at that. And it's tiny. It's just a, you know, a 14500. Wow. There's a light flashing over there. Can you see it right in the distance? Now, who is that? Is that someone on a bike? I think they might be coming this way, so I might have to make a move. I'll turn that out. Right, pop that in the back, and then I'll quickly show you the other one. I think that might be a bike coming because I see different flashes on it. Yeah. So then the next one, oh, is it a UFO? Look, there's two flashes now. There's double. Right, so this is the FW. Is this the FWAA? Let's have a look here. This is the FWAA, so let's show that on turbo. Boom, pretty nice. Less lumens than the X4 though, obviously, so not quite as good. So turn that out. Boom. So just so you can calibrate by looking at that. And then what else we're looking at? We are looking at the TS10 from Workhorse, so we'll look at that. Boom. Go to turbo on that. Lovely tint on that. That's not far off the X4. It's not the same output, but it's not bad, is it? Wow. Those lights are still flashing over there. You see them right in the middle there. If anyone knows what sort of UFO that is, let me know. Right. Pop that in there. And then what else have we got here? One more. And it is the T35 Ace Beam. Right, let's get that on. Make sure it's on the highest setting. So I think I need to click this, don't I? That's it, right. Very throwy. You can see the beam again, similar to the T6. So very good. It's going all the way down to those flashing UFO lights. Do, 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 do. There you go. Right, boom. Right, let's walk about a bit and I'll discuss this a little bit more. Right, X4. Let's give you the quick cover story here. Turn that off, turn that on, turn that off, turn that on. Right, okay, X4, there it is. IP68, that's their claim, not mine. Type-C charging, as you can see there. Side mode. It's got pretty much everything you need, and you can change the cell. So for all the eco warriors who go, oh, you need to replace the cell. Okay, go and replace the cell. There you go. You have that option. There you go. And dedicated tail clicker, which allows you to get straight to its main beam, and if you need it, strobe. If you happen to need that, I'll just show you that there now. Let's turn that on, and then we'll go to, that's the main beam there, and then there's strobe. So pretty decent, pretty decent. It's also an alternative strobe as well. It does one frequency, then another frequency, then another frequency, then another frequency. So I prefer those. They're more dazzling in my personal opinion. So pretty good. There you go. Right, turn that out. Right, I'm off because I think I've covered everything. Right, there you go. I'll get the full review up when I have time. And actually, look at this. I've found a bike. So if anyone knows whose bike this is, it's somewhere in England. Look, whose bike's that? And why did you leave it? Unless he fell out of a plane. Is there anything up there? I don't think he's fallen out of a plane. Answers on a postcard. Right, I'm off. Good night.